What if I told you what was probably Canada's hottest real estate market only about a year ago is now seeing home prices decline? Hey there, welcome back. My name is Matthew Pfeifer. That's my trusted assistant Matilda, and this is monthly Canadian real estate market update here on Prairie Real Estate. If you have been waiting for the Toronto real estate market to crash, you're getting your wish. Prices are declining rapidly there right now. But in Montreal, they're seeing probably the hottest market they've had since 2020, and multiple Canadian cities just set new all-time highs for their prices. And that is why I'm breaking these individual cities down one by one, because the national stats, well, they're kind of pointless right now. The sales slide continues in Victoria, even though, according to my 5-year average, things actually tightened up a little bit. That is mainly due to the fact that, well, there was this thing that happened back in April 2020 that caused the real estate market to basically pause for a month or two. Thankfully, that month is going to fall off when we come back to this again next year, because that is really skewing down my sales number average for my 5-year rolling average. And in kind of a flip of trends, we've been talking about how condo sales have been relatively strong in Victoria recently. It was actually single family homes that outperformed condos. They saw about a 10% drop year over year in sales last month. I still think that one factor playing into the market is, of course, the federal election that we had that typically slows down the real estate market. I don't think it's by any means the only or the largest factor, and we'll have a better idea when we look back on this next month to see if there's been any sort of jump in activity. Kind of anecdotal evidence talking with real estate agents in Victoria is that there are seeing a little bit of an increase in activity, so we'll have to see if that actually pans out in the numbers. The increase in new listings and active inventory is giving home buyers in Victoria not only more choice, but more negotiation leverage with sellers, as we're seeing months of inventories increasing, closing in on a buyer's market. But that's what makes home price increases in Victoria really perplexing, very opposite to what we're seeing in other centers like Vancouver, where they are having new listings and active inventory piling up, but prices are dropping. The Vancouver real estate market is the slowest real estate market in Canada right now. Only Toronto are there seeing worse sales numbers. The 2,100 homes sold in the month is the worst non-pandemic month for home sales in the last decade, although it does look like it might, just by a little bit, be starting to creep back up. We'll have to wait and see on that. And after having new listings well above the 5-year average for the whole year so far, we saw that drop down a little bit, although it's still above the 5-year average. And right now, the 16,000 homes that are for sale in Vancouver is the highest active inventory in the last decade. And that's not just for April. Any month, any year in the last decade, there has not been more homes for sale. But for me, probably the biggest indicator of a slowdown in the Vancouver real estate market is, of course, home prices. Not only did they drop about 2% year over year, but we saw a month over month decline in a spring market. That basically never happens. Well, this is something that hasn't happened in the Calgary real estate market in a long time. More on that in just 1 second here. We've now had 2 months in a row with over 4,000 new listings each month, and the active inventory is closing in on 6,000. There hasn't been 6,000 homes for sale in Calgary at this time of year since 2021. But the big story in the Calgary real estate market is home prices. The composite benchmark price not only dropped about 1.5% year over year, we saw it drop month over month, although very slightly. That basically never happens in the spring market. Even in years in the Calgary real estate market where home prices declined overall throughout the year, typically there was month over month increases in the spring. When you're looking at individual property types in Calgary, the single family homes, they're still up about 2.5% year over year. Semi-detached is up almost 4% year over year. It is townhouses and even more so condos where they're seeing little to no price growth at all year over year. Here's what the Edmonton Real Estate Board had to say about the Edmonton real estate market this past month. Change in recent inventory trends signals a busy market ahead, but there is some good news for home buyers here. We saw new listings increase, the gap in active inventory shrunk just a little bit, and months in inventory got a little bit larger. So is this a shift in the Edmonton real estate market as it flipped like we've seen in Calgary? Well, before I think we start saying that, we've got to see a larger trend in the data. But we need to talk about home prices in Edmonton, because I think everybody is going to be talking about what happened this past month for the composite benchmark price, up 10% year over year, but unchanged month over month. So that's got a lot of people thinking, whoa, the boom in the Edmonton real estate market must be hitting the brakes. But if you go back and look at previous years, it's not that abnormal in the last few years to see some fairly substantial price increases like we have been seeing in January, February, March. And then as we hit April and May, to see those price increases shrink dramatically before starting to fall back off in that September, October timeframe as the weather cools down. So no, I don't think right now the Edmonton real estate market has just flipped, at least not yet. You would think with how red hot the Regina real estate market is that sales are setting new records, but actually we're down about 10% from last year, which was the best year ever for home sales. And you probably already know why I'm going to say that sales are down. It's due to the lack of inventory, not buyer demand. And that's why we're seeing so many multiple offers and prices increasing so rapidly right now. Even compared to last year, where inventory levels were what I consider critically, historically low, we've got fewer houses on the market right now and new listings continue to lag. Although the last couple of months, that gap has shrunk a little bit, but not enough. What I'm seeing in the market right now is homes that are priced right around or slightly below market value. Those are selling with multiple offers and typically well above asking price. It's the houses that don't present well or they're priced a little high. Those are the ones that are sitting on the market. And I'm telling buyers right now, there's not a lot of hidden gems or those diamond in the rough. There's a lot of rough. If it's sitting on the market for a long period of time, there's probably a reason why. And of course, the story this month is home prices. At $335,000, that composite benchmark price sets a new all-time high. The previous record was May 2022, when the composite benchmark price reached $334,000. Okay, I want to lay out a totally hypothetical situation for you. In the Saskatoon real estate market, a house gets listed for sale. It's about a 900 square foot bungalow in a nice neighborhood. They have 2 open houses over the weekend, get 150 showings, then receive 51 offers and accept an offer $100,000 over the asking price. That's not a hypothetical. That actually just happened in Saskatoon. Now, yes, that house probably should have been priced $30,000 to $50,000 higher, but very clearly far more demand than there is available supply in Saskatoon right now. This was the first month this year that we have seen home sales decline versus last year. Yes, they're still up versus the 5-year average. And no, this is not some magical flip in the Saskatoon real estate market where things are all of a sudden slowing down. You know what I'm going to say? The lack of inventory is what's holding back sales, hence 51 offers on a single house. They did see a bump in the overall number of homes listed for sale, but talking with real estate agents there, they kind of told me it's not really the right inventory. A lot of condos came up for sale, mainly from people that had them and were trying to sell them a few years ago. They were underwater at the time. Now the prices have increased. They're trying to unload them. A few years ago, if you had said to me in Saskatoon home prices would creep up over $450,000, I would have laughed at you. And yet right now, the composite benchmark price being at $422,000 and seeing that appreciated about $10,000 a month, that's a very realistic possibility. Okay, before we get into the stats of Winnipeg real estate market, let's talk about Game 7 versus St. Louis. That was incredible. Now, I'm never gonna cheer for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, but you know what? I'll cheer for the Winnipeg Jets. If somebody wants to send me a jersey, I'll wear it next month's update. Now, getting back to talk about real estate in Winnipeg, agents are telling me that buyers are getting far more aggressive and in some cases more desperate with their offers. They're seeing more and more unconditional offers, mostly over asking price, and offers that do have conditions are typically only on for 2 to 3 days before they're removing all those conditions. So really tight timelines. The good news for home buyers in Winnipeg is that we saw an increase in new listings. The bad news is that that was basically entirely offset by the number of homes that were sold, and months of inventory actually dropped. When talking about home prices in Winnipeg, that composite benchmark price is up 10% year over year, and we are seeing fairly consistent $10,000 per month increases in that composite benchmark price. The good news potentially for home buyers is that if history is any guide, it is not that uncommon that we see those big price increases early in the year. And then when we get to May and June, those price increases slow down a little bit. So we'll have to wait and see if history repeats itself again this year. Talking with real estate agents in Toronto, they let me in on a little piece of insight that I had no idea, and that was there were more single family homes sold last month in Toronto than condos. And that hasn't happened in basically 2 or 3 decades. But we are seeing home sales creep up just a tiny little bit versus that 5-year average. And it is Toronto proper that's really skewing the new listing and active listings numbers right now, because those numbers are just so inflated with how many shoebox condos are for sale right now. Now, if you are thinking about buying in Toronto right now, you have to be looking at the comps and knowing that home prices across basically every price point of any property type are all declining right now. So you should probably be making your offers accordingly. You keen ad viewers out there are going to notice the composite benchmark price numbers are different this month. And that is because as the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board has been expanding, including more cities, it's skewing their historical data. They've gone and updated and revised all the data. So I had to go back and update my charts. And this information wasn't publicly available at the time I was making the video. And I had to get my friend Rob Marsiglio from Toronto to get me all that data. So thank you, Rob, for that. He has a great YouTube channel all about the Toronto real estate market, very data specific. I'll put a link to his channel in the description of this video below. And that benchmark price is not only down 5% year over year, we've seen now 2 months in a row that it has dropped. That essentially never happens in a spring real estate market, showing how weak the sales are and prices are in the Toronto real estate market right now. The Ottawa Real Estate Board says their market is building momentum. Is it really, or is that just realtor spin? Well, looking at the sales numbers, those continue to be below the 5-year average, but they're closing the gap to the 5-year average, having the strongest month they've had so far this year. Number of new listings versus the 5-year average, well, that's actually pretty deceiving because, well, there was this thing that happened back in 2020 and nobody wanted to put their house up for sale for a little while. And so my 5-year average is pretty skewed. If I kind of throw that month out and plug in a more normal number, well, actually new listings are basically normal right now. And it's also a similar story for active listings. Again, throw out 2020 and active listings are only up about 5%. Unlike what's happening throughout most of Ontario, home prices in Ottawa are continuing to increase, although it looks like that pace of price appreciation might be slowing down. That being said, right now, home prices in Ottawa, at least according to the composite benchmark price, are higher today than they were at any point last year. I'm really interested to see what happens next month with the numbers, because elections typically slow down the Ottawa real estate markets. We'll have to see if we see a jump in activity. The Montreal real estate market is absolutely exploding right now. Agents are telling me it's just like the pandemic all over again. They went from 5% below the 5-year average last month to 18% above the 5-year average this month. And yes, we had this thing happen in 2020 that really skewed the numbers for a couple of months. Nobody wanted to go buy houses all of a sudden. Even if I adjust the data for that, we're going to see sales numbers basically align with the 5-year average, which is, well, actually pretty busy. A similar story plays out when you look at new listings and active inventory. If I adjust for the 2020 slowdown, new listings are right on par with the 5-year average. Active inventory is just above the 5-year average, but versus the 10-year average, both are well below. Real estate agents in Montreal are telling me that there is a real shortage of single-family homes priced under $1 million right now. They're seeing some of them go for over $100,000 over asking price. And that doesn't surprise me when you look at what's happening with the composite benchmark price, up 8% year over year, meaning Montreal is actually sitting in 4th place for the largest year-over-year price increases so far this year. Number 1 is Quebec City at 19%. After a little bit of a slower year last year, it looks like the Halifax real estate market is starting to pick up some steam and momentum again. Number of homes sold this past month, down below the 5-year average. It was the most number of homes sold in a month so far this year. That should be expected because it's spring market, but it was also the smallest gap versus the 5-year average all year long. The good news for home buyers in Halifax is that there's about 1,000 homes for sale. The bad news for home buyers in Halifax is the number of new listings took a nosedive last month. And I know I sound like a broken record, but it continues to be true. Homes priced under $600,000 in Halifax, that is where the most competition is, where the highest price increases are, and unfortunately, the biggest lack of inventory. Agents are telling me they're seeing 10 or 15 offers on houses in that price point right now, over $600,000, sometimes 1, 2, 3, more kind of normal negotiations there. But if you are buying a house under $600,000 in Halifax, that is where you're going to see the most competition from other buyers. Maybe a little glimmer of good news is that the price appreciation we're seeing in Halifax might be slowing down. We'll have to wait and see what we see next month.